Hi, everybody. Mr. Chan here. Thanks for joining me today. Today, we got this week's security news update. So what do we got here? Well, first thing is F5 systems. F5 is one of the biggest makers of enterprise grade and carrier grade firewalls. Typically used by bigger companies, Fortune 1000 companies, but some smaller companies too. Definitely expensive products. And apparently, the bad guys, aka the Chinese or the Russians, had been inside their network for years, undetected. Kind of a bit embarrassing for a security company, but you know that happens, I suppose. They stole, amongst other things, uh, client data that they had. They stole customer configuration data about their build environment. It's an interesting question about whether or not bad guys were inside, compromising their code chain, which we've seen before in other places, of course. So unclear. They went off and hired some big name brand investigative folks, and they came back and said, no, 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 we don't think anything bad happened. I'm not sure exactly if the Chinese or Russians were in there for 2 or 3 years and they didn't do anything. That's kind of strange. Um, F5 did release a bunch of unreleased fixes, since obviously now the Chinese know what the bugs are, or Russians, whoever it was. So not great. I guess the short answer is, if you are an F5 user, keep your toes aware. Really, have your antenna out looking for anomalous behavior, because I don't think we're getting the whole story there, but what do I know? The Dutch intelligence services admitted that they have reduced information sharing with the United States. They say they still have a good relationship with NSA and CIA, but they are selective about what they share with us. So that they say is due to the chaos in Washington. So that's not great. On the other hand, something that the president has been trying to do, which is make the Europeans more self-autonomous. They said, the Dutch said, they've really ramped up their sharing of information with other European allies, just not with us. And lastly, in this section, after last week's Amazon meltdown, now would be a good time to kind of look at your cyber risk insurance policy. We can help you with that, of course. You don't want to be in a boat where you don't have coverage for business interruptions caused by a third-party player, or fourth party, or fifth party, or sixth party player, which is a big problem, right? Even if you weren't an Amazon customer, it doesn't mean that someone that you used was an Amazon customer, which we saw a lot of last week. Um, and if you don't know, what clouds your supplier is using, now would be a great time to go off and ask that question, so that you did have a good sense of that. And next time this happens, and there will be a next time, there definitely will be a next time, you'll know, who's likely affected and who's not. An interesting one, a bunch of interesting ones this week, but one to talk about, which is, when are we going to see CMMC requirements show up in RFPs and later contracts? And the answer is, we are already seeing them showing up, with the assumption that these RFPs are going to close. Submissions are going to close after November 10th. They're already putting CMMC level 1, level 2 requirements in the RFPs. Now, SAM.gov is pretty quiet right now, given the shutdown, but assume that as soon as it opens up, we're going to see a deluge of RFPs out there, and I predict every one of them will include some CMMC requirement. So if you've been holding off, now would be a good time to move forward. Cigna Insurance just got caught. They're using AI to cut claims backlog, which is code word for denying claims, and they got caught at it. So apparently, they used an AI model to try to detect when the treatment didn't match what their model thought was the appropriate treatment for a particular diagnosis. As a result of that, they denied about 300,000 claims, It took them about 1.2 seconds per claim to deny them, which is super efficient. Definitely helps reduce the backlog. Unfortunately, it also breaks the law. So now they're being sued, and it'll be interesting to see what happens there. So, word to the wise, if you're going to use AI and you're in a regulated space, make sure that how you use it does in fact comply with the regulations. Microsoft has, and they do this every now and then, they issued a patch for WSUS, which is their local Windows update service for companies that want to run updates locally. They did that last patch Tuesday. They apparently didn't get it quite right. They got it sort of close, but not quite right. So now there's an emergency out-of-band patch to patch the patch. And either the bug or the patch, or maybe both, have a score of 9.8 out of 10. So that's a pretty serious score. Lawyers are blaming everybody. Occasionally, they blame themselves. I'll start to say everybody but themselves. Family emergencies, their contracted professionals that they hire for problems with AI. We're seeing this right and left, where these lawyers are just pushing shit into the AI and garbage in, garbage out, and the AIs do hallucinate some, and they're apparently not checking their work. One lawyer was fined $10,000. I'm not sure whether he's going to bill his client for that, but he got fined $10,000 for this. Some of them are coming up with excuses that are, at least a bit of a I screwed up kind of excuse, but we'll see where this goes. But bottom line, AI is good. Just make sure you check your work. No different than your arithmetic homework in elementary school. New York has fined 8 different insurance companies a combined $14 million for breaches. The total between them wasn't that big, 800,000 people, which sounds like a lot of people, but in today's world, that's not a lot of people. At least in one, no, I think actually multiple cases, the crooks could provide a very minimal amount of personal information on a requested quote screen for insurance, car insurance, and the tool would go off and figure out who the person was, what the car was, and spit out all this private information without the user approving it. They just did it. Suffice it to say, crooks figured that out pretty quickly, and they were doing that, and so they were, stealing people's information. And these are big companies like Hartford and Liberty Mutual, people, Geico, Travelers were fined last year $11 million for doing the same thing. So you think they learn, but apparently not. And this is all about, let's see if we can go off and make it easier for people to apply for a loan, which I understand. But the downside of that is, if you don't really need to identify yourself with anything that is particularly robust, then the bad guys will definitely abuse that for sure. In the lack of or the gap of federal privacy law, the state attorneys general are going after companies. They settled 78 privacy cases, 564 breach cases, and 117 platform cases. Platform cases would be like Meta, something like that. So they're going after these people, which is good because the feds are definitely not. This is unsettling. Former L3 Harris cyberbox was arrested for trying to sell secrets to the Russians. He stole secrets from his employer. It's not clear who it was, but maybe the companies that Harris bought, which would be Azimuth and Lynchpin. And they both developed 0-day attacks, unknown attacks for hopefully government customers. Those obviously would be very valuable to Russia. So he was trying to sell them for $1 million. Fortunately, who he sold it to was an FBI agent, and that didn't work out so well for him. Good for us, not so good for him. Is Meta secretly scanning your phone's camera roll? The answer is actually yes. There's an article, a ZDNet article, that talks about how you find the setting buried in the Facebook app and in a different place in the Instagram app. But they claim that, of course, what they're doing is they're scanning your photos so they can sell you more targeted ads and they can make more ad revenue. They claim that this feature is off by default. I looked at this on my Facebook app, which I never use, and it was on. So maybe it's off by default and somehow magically I turned it on. I don't think so. I can't prove that, but I don't think so. So my guess is it's on by default. So if that's a concern that Facebook and Meta are taking your camera roll and uh, sucking the data in for figuring out how to sell you more crap that you don't know that you don't need, well then turn it off. Netcore Cloud, whom I've never heard of, but I'm sure there's millions of companies I've never heard of, is a global email marketing and automation company. And a researcher found a database that was exposed to the internet with no password, with 40 billion, that's with a B, 40 billion records in it, not encrypted, obviously. We tend to think of email marketing as junk mail, but these guys are sending health records, all kind of banking records, all kinds of stuff. So it's not just junk mail. I'm sure Netcore Cloud's clients are totally thrilled about that, and the lawsuits probably have already begun. Because depending, the health records, depending on what it was, they could be in violation of HIPAA potentially. My guess is probably not, because they probably not sending that kind of detailed information. Is probably more, hopefully, where they send you a link and you have to log in, but maybe not. The Jaguar Land Rover breach is now, drumroll please, the costliest ever in UK history. They think about $2.5 billion, affecting 5,000 companies. All the downstream supply chain of Jaguar. So that's a big deal, and the government had to bail out Jaguar so it didn't collapse. As federal cybersecurity support for cities ends, the attacks multiply. There's no big surprise there. Kaufman County, Texas, outside Dallas, Laverne, Tennessee, DeKalb County in Indiana, Chester County in Pennsylvania, just a couple from the last week or two. The hackers know that these guys don't have the money to secure their infrastructure, and they just take advantage. It's kind of like taking candy from a baby. It's not hard to do, unfortunately. And then even if people don't pay the ransom, then either they sell access to the city's systems or they sell the data, one or the other. So it's a kind of a win-win deal for the hackers. As I said earlier, Amazon broke the internet last week. In this case, it really did break the internet. And it points to, how many businesses are dependent on Amazon and how that trickles down to you and me, because, we couldn't get to our banking application because our bank uses Amazon to host the application. So, now would be a good time to go look at, your resilience and your redundancy to try to understand what happens if one of these big players goes down again, which it will. Kind of a addition to the lawyers being fined $10,000 for using AI. As a beer commercial goes, with great responsibility, great power comes great responsibility. Well, that's what we got here. That's not exactly how the beer commercial goes, but it's kind of like that. You don't have to be one of those casualties. More and more people use more AI. We're seeing more attacks come to light, and it's not just you, unfortunately, using AI. It's the companies that you deal with. So, now is a good time to try to figure all that out. ChatGPT has figured out that sex sells. This is not profound. There's lots of AI companies out there doing things that are sex related, but they decided that they're going to go off and sell chatbots, sex oriented chatbots. They are going to, they say, try to identify who are adults and who are not. I'm sure that will be quite perfect. Not. And in the meantime, They're going to be making money hand over fist, probably until they get sued. That would be my guess. But, this is the first time a mainstream player has tried to separate you from your money using sex as the hook. And in the news bites, just because you're a big company does not mean you're secure. That seems to be repeated all the time. Uh, GPS spoofing, where a foreign adversary goes off and makes the GPS fail or have it think that it's someplace where it's not. Um, that made the president of the EU's plane had to land because of that by hand using paper maps because of that. So we're seeing GPS spoofing attacks exceeding 1,000 attacks per day. Uh, SpaceX has disabled more than 2,000 Starlink terminals, mostly used in the Far East by scammers trying to sell you romance scams. So it's a good thing they did that. I'm guessing it's not because they're really great human beings. I think they didn't like the negative PR they were getting. The UN set to vote last week on a resolution that would likely criminalize cybersecurity research, which is great. Hopefully, the United States does not ratify that resolution, although with Congress, you can never tell what they might do. And North Korea infiltrated the maker of drones that are used in Ukraine. Whether they went off and inserted bad code into the drones, I don't think so, because I think the Ukrainians add the code after the drone is delivered to them. But certainly they understand any vulnerabilities that those drones might have. So with that, thanks for listening. We appreciate it as always. And of course, if we can help you, we're thrilled to do that. Just give us a call. Thanks for listening.